October, so look for those. We're gonna have a lot of
Lots and lots.
Halloween bash and a lot of stuff coming up, so looking forward to that. And council, I do have two proclamations. We do not have a recipient for these, but I thought they were important to name these. We're gonna be participating. Mr. Esparza authorized also some of the ribbons that will be coming in to recognize the teachers. And we'll be wrapping the trees along City Hall to honor our educators. So
Nice.
that was just something that I felt it was something nice to do for our educators. They work so hard out there. So I'd like to read this, but we don't formally have someone here to receive this proclamation. This proclamation is from the Office of the Mayor of Cynthia Y. Carrasco. Whereas the future strength of Alice, Texas depends on providing a high-quality education to all students, and whereas teacher quality matters more to students' achievement than any other school-related factor, and whereas teachers spend countless hours preparing lesson plans and supporting students, and whereas our Alice Independent School District teachers have demonstrated great resilience, adaptability, and creativity during the COVID-19 crisis, and whereas our community recognizes and supports its teachers in educating the children of this community, and whereas #TeachersCan is a statewide movement supported by more than 125 partnering businesses and organizations committed to elevating the teaching profession and honoring the critical role teachers play in the success of Texas. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Alice City Council joins #TeachersCan and its partnering entities across Texas in celebrating World Teachers Day and proclaim October 5th, 2022 to be Alice Teachers Day. Be it further resolved that the Alice City Council encourages members of our community to be a light for the Alice teachers and personally express appreciation to our teachers and display a light blue ribbon outside your homes or businesses the week of October 5th as a symbol of support for our educators. In testimony whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed the seal of the City of Alice, Texas, on the 20th day of September 2022. Thank you so much, and teachers out there, we're so proud of you for everything you do for our community and for our students. Okay. There's one other proclamation, and if everyone will look at all the beautiful decorations. Thank you, Miss Nellie and Miss Odie. Odie called early and said, I have a sarape. I'm going to get some decorations. So thank you so much. It looks beautiful. It really does. And this is in celebration of our Hispanic Heritage Month. So I do have a proclamation for that. I'm going to read that. Council, from the mayor's office. Whereas during National Hispanic Heritage Month, the City of Alice recognizes that Hispanic heritage is American heritage, and we see that influence in almost every aspect of our lives. And whereas each year Americans observe National Hispanic Heritage Month by celebrating the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Mexico, Spain, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas the observation started in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson and expanded to President Ronald Reagan in 1988 through the legislative encouragement of Congress member Esteban Torres of California to cover the period at which it is celebrated today, September 15th through October 15th. And whereas the day of September 15th is significant because it is the anniversary of the independence for Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their Independence Days on September 16th and 18th, respectfully, I can't say it, but, and whereas, in the words of famed Mexican designer Marisol Peralta, your individuality is important, but so is belonging. Recognize the parts of your culture that have shaped your past and the parts you want to carry with you into the future. And whereas an activist, Dolores Huerta, encouraged involvement. We are needed. We have to be engaged and get ourselves elected to school boards, city councils, si se puede. And truly, we have seen this locally many times over at the county, school boards, city councils, business community, and influential activists all throughout our great community. Therefore, be it proclaimed by the City of Alice that on this day we recognize September 15, 2022 through October 15, 2022 as Hispanic Heritage Month in recognition of the notable footprints of Hispanic culture in our daily lives. In testimony whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the City of Alice, Texas, on the 20th day of September 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, our city manager / staff reports. 4.1, Texas Water Development Board approves $7 million to the City of Alice for a second water source project.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor
Stubbs.
and Council. On September 1st, I went to the Texas Water Development Board and got to visit with them and gave them a statement about this project. It was on their agenda. This is phase 2 of our groundwater project, and they approved it. We were there. Kingsville has a project also that they approved, but I got to visit with the 2 board members they have. They're missing a board member, so there's only 2 that were present. After the meeting, I got to visit with them a little bit about our project. But they did approve the $7 million loan. Of that, over $2 million is loan forgiveness. That's a pretty big number that we have. And the other phase 1 had a loan forgiveness of what was that one? $1 million.
It was a little over, I think,
Yeah.
$1 million. Yeah.
A little over $1 million. So altogether, $3 million of loan forgiveness from the Texas Water Development Board. But also wanted to it was kind of exciting. This is the last time that we're in front of them on this project. But this started, the roots on this project started in 2010 to 13, trying to find an alternate water supply and looking for water along the transmission line. We did a study back then. I know there was a study done on the wells and the aquifer that's along the transmission line. Also talked about rehabbing the water line that comes from Lake Corpus Christi. And in 2014, there was an actual, that's when Bill Norris got involved in 14 and did a more in-depth study with the aquifer that we're in now, which is a Jasper. But in 2017, it is when it a little bit more officially started with the project information form that was submitted. And then it got on the intended use plan from the state in 2017. And so in 2018 was the actual invitation to apply. So, and that happened. So it's been a long time coming. And went through a lot of different people, a lot of different hands, but it's finally there. They approved that phase 2. And so now, another agenda item is the financing part of it. And the guys are here from Estrada and Hinojosa on that. But it's kind of an exciting time because they were, we kind of caught a little bit of the tail end of it, although it was a big portion of the tail end on it. And so hopefully, as we were talking to the Water Development Board, is that if everything goes as planned with the discharge permitting and the environmental and the engineering part, that hopefully in the first quarter of 2024, there'll be water actually being produced and running through and blending with our water. So that's kind of the time frame. There was some talk of some environmental delays, which could push it another 6 months from there, but we're trying to mitigate that. And so hopefully we'll be still on the original schedule that we have. So wanted to give you an update on that. That's it.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
I appreciate that, thank you. And then we'll move on to presentations, agenda item number 5, 5.1, update on Parks and Recreation Maintenance Plan. And then 5.2, update on multi-year street and infrastructure maintenance and repair plan. Mrs. Medrano?
Yes,
you'll
thank
be
you,
in-
Mayor. Yes. Alrighty, well, let's get started. Pull up the PowerPoint, thank you. So, thank you. So today I'm here to talk about a couple of projects that we've been working on for a few months. The first is establishing a park standards of care and maintenance plan. A little overview of our parks. Our FY23 adopted budget is $909,917. We have 15 and a half FTEs, and that is the breakdown of the FTEs within that department, and then that's a picture of 2 of the new tractors that the department purchased this fiscal year. The department manages 12 city parks, which is approximately 80 acres, 10 city properties, and the properties are city buildings such as City Hall, the police station, the substation, our physical assets, really the area around there, totaling 54 acres. We have 11 ball fields that the department manages, along with 13 public works areas, 90.78 acres, and then 39 areas of rights-of-way or other areas that aren't exactly right-of-way, and that covers 189 acres. The parks are 80 acres and include the amenities such as playgrounds, receptacles, restrooms, trees, landscaping. So there's more than just mowing at each park. And this is just a high-level map of the city, and the areas highlighted in yellow are the areas that the department mows. So it includes city facilities, parks, and then rights-of-way throughout the city. Yeah. I don't know if I have a pointer on here. No, I don't.
Are the creeks included? They are?
All the lines.
Yeah, all the lines.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, all the yellow, and then the, I thought I had a pointer on the remote, but I guess not. It doesn't work, okay, on TVs, okay. So every area that you see highlighted in yellow there, we'll just leave it up for a second. So this is what we've come up with, and I think you have a copy of this. So this is a standard of care matrix. And what it does is it defines the levels of care, either A, B, C, D, or E, and then the other axis indicates what action will be taken there. So you attend, which is litter, remove new growth, apply ant poison, remove weeds, check for low branches, and based on a formula, we decide which parks will be attended either at the A level, B level, C, D, or E level. So that could range anywhere from daily, 7 days a week, to monthly. And then the other areas are mowing, emptying receptacles, attending facilities, which is clean and restock restrooms, trim trees, care for the landscaping, park amenities, inspections, playscapes, benches, pavilions, signs, lights, and then weed spraying. You'll see that there's a note there that there's a new treatment in play right now, and so they're spraying and monitoring, and based on how that goes is how each of the areas will be defined later. So the next page is it's a draft of the 12 parks, their level of service, And we've sort of determined priority based on either number of visits or visibility, but mostly based on usage for the park. As you know, we can't get to all 12 on the same day, so we have to have some order of prioritization. And so we're still working through the yearly visits, but you can see that Anderson Park will be a gold or level A because it has 250,000 visits per year, and that's not individual visitors, that's actual visits. So you have a number of visitors who might visit like 10 times a year or more. Lake Finley has approximately 57,000 visitors a year. Helt Park, that asterisk indicates that it's not, the 3,000 isn't the number of visits there per day. It actually doesn't, I think I lost my mic, receive that many visits, but it's based off of the radius impact. So the number of cars that pass per day is about 3,000, so it is a highly trafficked area. And then I understand that the park is also used for special events. And then Veterans Park, 5.8 thousand visits, and we'll add the rest. This is still a working document. And so that is the end of the presentation. This was just a briefing on what we're working on. We do have the same sort of template for city properties, ball fields, public right-of-ways. So it's actually a very robust list. And so once the entire project is finished, we'll come back and show you. But we wanted to give you a preview because we know there's been a lot of rain recently after coming out of drought. And so you might see that there are areas that need to be mowed. And so we wanted to inform council that we're working the plan, and Yolanda and her team haven't waited for the entire thing to be completed. They're implementing the plan now, and it's working out nicely. So thank you to Yolanda and her team for all of their hard work. I think we all see them throughout the city every day. Okay. And then we have a multi-year street and infrastructure maintenance plan. So this is addressing, now we're sort of transitioning over to Public Works. So we have 3 areas, I guess departments, so to say, or orgs within the city that work on either street maintenance, repairs, or new construction. And those departments are street maintenance, water and wastewater maintenance and construction, and special projects. So that's a breakdown of each of the departments, their budgets, and then the FTEs for each of those areas. This is sort of to give a perspective of, you know, the capacity of manpower that we're working with.
We don't have is that part in here? I didn't see it.
No, I'm sorry, it's on the PowerPoint, but I'll email this to you
Okay,
afterwards.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So current infrastructure, there's a little note with every project, there is ancillary street work to be done, but this is current funding in play. So we had the 2019 CDBG grant, $300,000, and that project was completed maybe a couple weeks ago or a month ago or so. It's been a little bit. And that work was on San Felipe, Trevino, and Escobar, and that was wastewater infrastructure. And they did do street work afterwards. Joe and his team continue to work on streets that were presented to council as part of the American Rescue Plan Act last year. And so that was a $2 million budget, and so those projects are in progress. We have the GLO $6 million drainage project on the Virginia Street area. That's not started yet, but it is about to kick off here pretty soon. And then we have $355,000 for a wastewater infrastructure project on King and North Aransas, not started yet. And then, of course, the combined operating budgets from that first slide for our FTEs and equipment, fuel, or operating expense for the department at 2.5, and they address year-round projects outside of these special grant projects. This is the equipment that the department works with that have on hand a zipper, water truck, and a roller. They'll be getting an oiler next month, so that's great news. And there's still a need for a chip spreader and a pad foot, and that's what that picture is. It's a chip spreader. FY22 completed street projects. We have Hobbs, Kennedy, Trevino, Escobar, a part of North Aransas, Triangle Street, Hub Street, and Fesco Avenue. And this is sort of the big multi-year proposed list of projects that we have created. So there's a legend that indicates whether or not it's water, the combination of either water, wastewater, or street. So it's color-coded in that way. Here's a draft proposed list of water line utility projects. And like I said, it's multi-year. So we're still working on it. So once it's complete, we'll come back and have a better proposal on the number of years.
That's feet.
Linear, so if you look
Linear
to the
feet.
farthest
Yeah.
column, it's linear feet or square yards, cubic yards. It addresses that.
Thank you.
This is the draft sewer line project list. And then the draft street project list. So these projects stemmed from really an initial list of about 32 projects. And then the water and the wastewater sort of grew out of that because you don't really want to do the work on the street without addressing what's underneath. And so we sort of started with that and then worked backwards. And that is the end of the presentation. So just wanted to give council a preview on what Demetrio and I and Joe and ICE Engineering have been working on to put together for a working plan to really prioritize the work done by those departments.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank
You
you.
don't mind emailing those?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and voted on separately. 6.1, discuss, consider, and act upon approval of city council minutes for August 16, 2022, August 18, 2022, August 29, 2022, and September 8, 2022. Okay, council? Any corrections or discussion on, it's a consent agenda, so.
Mayor, I make a motion to accept consent agenda items as presented. Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Agenda item number 7, individual consideration. 7.1, discuss, consider, and take action on ordinance. Okay, wait, I think there was is there different verbiage that needed to be added on
No,
this one?
just for the motion.
Oh, it's 7.2?
And it's just for the motion, not for the actual agenda item.
Okay. Discuss, I'm sorry about that, let me repeat it. 7.1, discuss, consider, and take action on an ordinance authorizing and approving publication and posting of notice of intention to issue combination tax and surplus revenue certificates of obligation in a maximum aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5,500,000 and providing an effective date.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was like, what? Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Put it over here. Gee,
Are you
to
good?
remind me. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. For the record, my name is Don Gonzalez with Estrada y Hinojosa. With me this evening also is Matt Lujan with Estrada y Hinojosa, as well as Jay Waters with the law firm of McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. They serve as bond counsel, and our firm serves as financial advisor to the city of Alice. We've had the privilege of working with the city for a number of years, and as the city manager mentioned in his report earlier, this financing that you're contemplating, this action tonight would be merely to begin the process of giving notice to the public. So I'm going to go through this, but before I get into the presentation, I did want to recognize the number of years and work that we've been able to do with the city manager. Thank you, Michael, for your work and support. With Gabe, your Director of Finance, as well as Vanessa Torres and your City Secretary. We've done a lot of coordination on a lot of different things that have to be presented to the Water Development Board, applications, and we've worked with the engineers and various others to get this done. So this evening is a continuation of that process. We are just kind of at the next step, if you will, in terms of what we're doing. So if you go to page 1 in the presentation, we have the participants in the transaction. The City of Alice would be the issuer of the debt. Estrada y Hinojosa and Company is financial advisor. McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton is bond counsel. The Texas Water Development Board will be the purchaser of the debt and the provider of the loan forgiveness or grant funds. And UMB Bank is the paying agent and escrow agent. On page 2, and feel free to stop me at any time with any questions. On page 2, what we wanted to do is give you a little bit of historical perspective on what's been happening with interest rates. As probably everybody knows, the Federal Reserve has been increasing interest rates pretty dramatically here this year in 2022. They're actually meeting today and tomorrow. It's expected that there'll be another 75 basis points or 0.75% increase by the Fed at tomorrow afternoon when they release. So that's pretty much what's anticipated. That's one of a number of increases that they've made. There's more that are expected to come between now and the end of the calendar year. But what this particular page 2 graphic shows is when the Fed moves interest rates, they move the very shortest term interest rates. And so if you look at the left side of this table, you'll see that the green diamond represents the current, what we call AAA MMD, which is the index that we work off of for tax-exempt interest rates. And the blue square represents the average of where interest rates have been going back to the year 2000. And then you can see 1 through 30, assuming you had a 30-year transaction, each year would represent one maturity of the 30 years. And so what the Fed's been doing is increasing the short end, which is the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years have had the most dramatic impact. And that's because that's where the Fed right now has been putting pressure. What typically happens is you'll see the movement on the shortest end, mostly in year 1, will be the most dramatic, and then lesser of an impact on each year thereafter, to where you see starting at about year 10, they're almost directly on top of each other. And so we have seen interest rates move up in terms of the current rates. Some of you may remember when we did the transaction in 2020 and also I believe in 2019, the green diamonds were all well below the blue boxes. And so we were, some of the most historical interest rates that we've ever experienced. And we don't know if we'll ever be back to those rates again, but we're very thankful that we were able to take advantage of those at the time. But what we're seeing now is where we are, for the most part, when you look out from about year 10 to year 30, is right about the average. And so it's not a bad place to be, but obviously we would like to be below that. And you can see down at the very bottom what percentage of the time that we have been below the average. And you can see that in the first 10 years, actually all the way through about year 14, it's less than 50%. And then when you get to about year 14 and beyond, it's slightly more than 50%. Any questions on that page? Moving on to slide 3, I really want to focus just a moment on the bottom right-hand side chart. A lot of what we do is data-driven. And so because the data becomes so important in some of the financial recommendations that we make, if you look at this table, the third column that's highlighted in gray, that's the MMD, which is Municipal Market Data Index, as of September the 16th. And that ranges from year 1 to year 30, from 2023 to 2052. And you can see if you were a natural AAA rated entity, that's more or less what kind of interest rate you would be looking at if you were borrowing in the marketplace. What we've seen is in 1 week, in the next column, the change in interest rates. That's very unusual. We will typically see somewhere in the neighborhood of about maybe 1, or I should say even like 0 to 3 basis points in a week would probably be a little more common. When we see this, ranging from about 11 basis points on the low to 18 basis points, that's many multiples of what we typically see in a typical week. And so this leading up to the Fed's actions this coming week, tomorrow in fact, is what's helping to propel these interest rates up very fast and in a very compressed short period of time. And so when we look at the change over the month, from literally a month ago, you can see that it's between 47 basis points all the way up to about 63 basis points. So again, that dramatic in 30 days. And then if you go to the farthest right column, the change in 1 year, between 203 basis points to about 238 basis points. That's phenomenal. It's over 2% in the course of 1 year on tax-exempt interest rates. So you can see these numbers and the dramatic effect that these have incurred in a very short period of time. This brings me to page 4, and I wanted to give you that backdrop because sometimes without a little bit of perspective, we don't get the benefit of what the city's been able to accomplish and what you're moving forward with respect to the Water Development Board. So in that top bullet, we are looking at a drinking water SRF program, and you'll be, as the city manager mentioned, this program goes back many years. I think the actual first phase of the first application, I remember coming to the council and making that presentation, I believe, in 2018 for that, and multiple presentations since then. But now where we are is now for this phase of financing. And we have 3 different pieces, 3 different components. The city manager mentioned these earlier. $3,934,000 in a subsidized below market interest rate. The 0% loan, which is for $1,020,000. And then what the Water Development Board calls principal forgiveness, $2,046,000. And that, they don't want to call it a grant, but we all kind of know it's a grant, but they have to call it principal forgiveness in their terminology. The next bullet deals with one of the requirements. In order to receive that principal forgiveness, that $2 million of grant money, you first have to draw down the loan funds. So if there's one catch that comes with this, it's you have to borrow the money first before you get the grant money. So just be aware of that requirement. The following bullet talks about the $3,934,000 and what those terms look like. They're not final yet because we won't actually receive final interest rates from the Water Development Board until we get closer to the time that we actually come back to you with the bond ordinance that actually says we're going to be issuing the bond. So right now, again, this is just to give notice to the public that you're planning to issue debt. So what we wanted to do is outline for you what these terms more or less look like. So we're looking at a 30-year term on $3,934,000. What we're doing is gradually stair-stepping the debt service up during the first 4 years. And then what we'll have is level debt service starting in 2027, again, going 30 years, so from 2027 to 2052, level debt service thereafter. The estimated interest rate, if we were actually doing this transaction this week, will actually be 45 days roughly from now. We would be at about 2.85%. Now, if you think back to the numbers that we were just talking about the page before, you would be borrowing at roughly what a AAA rated, natural AAA rated entity, and possibly even lower than that in terms of your borrowing rate. So it is a very much subsidized, low interest rate loan. And then we would be looking at, actually looking at a call date, which would be the earliest date that you could call those bonds in early and refinance them to a lower interest rate, if it makes sense and lower interest rates are available at that time. That would be December 1 of 2032. On the last bullet, the structured 0% loan is going to be level debt service for the entire 30 years, 0% interest rate, call date again at December 1, 2032. Right now, we would say you have the call provision in there, but chances are you're not going to call those bonds in early. They're at 0%. You're going to keep those out the entire time and not plan on paying those off anytime before the final maturity in 2052. One thing that we did do, just for your own information, I know the city manager talked about the benefit of the subsidized interest rate loan and the 0% loan. We did a quick calculation of what that savings would actually convert into with respect to dollars if you were looking at borrowing at normal interest rates without the subsidized loan interest rate or the 0% loan, and you'd probably be looking at just under $1.7 million in interest savings to the city over the 30 years. So it's very significant. So when you have a $2 million grant plus the benefit of roughly about another $1,690,000, almost $1,700,000, you're talking about about $3.7 million worth of funds over the next 30 years that the city's not going to have to pay back. So very, very attractive benefit for the city pursuing this project in this manner. The next page, estimated sources and uses. So we have three different sources, as I've mentioned before. The below market interest rate loan, $3,934,000. These are certificates of obligation, and as well as the 0% interest loan. The certificates of obligation are a double barrel pledge, and so similar to the debt that we previously worked with the city in issuing, is you have to have your ad valorem tax as a legal pledge, as well as a secondary source of revenue, in this particular case, the water and sewer utility system. So those two provide the double barrel that the Water Development Board will have as a legal pledge for the city to be able to provide that as security. So like on your home, you would typically have a mortgage. The city's not in a position to be able to have a mortgage on the assets that you're borrowing for. So would you give as a legal pledge for the repayment of the debt? So if for some reason the city did not pay it back, the Water Development Board says we have two legal mechanisms that we can use. One is we can force you to increase your ad valorem tax rate to be able to pay them back. The second one is to increase water and sewer rates to pay them back, or some combination thereof. So those are the two legal securities that are provided in this particular type of debt instrument that would be issued to the Water Development Board. On the uses of funds, the engineering and construction costs make up the majority of the project costs, about $6.7 million. The Water Development Board charges an origination fee to be able to borrow these funds. They're approximately $97,000, and then estimated costs of issuance are approximately $215,000 for a total of $7 million on the sources of funds and uses of funds. One of the things that you probably already are aware of is this is for a RO plant. So reverse osmosis is an expensive plant to operate. And so one of the things that we've had the benefit of doing is we've actually done the financing for most of the RO plants in Texas, actually, for that matter. The largest one being done by San Antonio Water System. We were involved with that one. as well as this one, Raymondville, Brownsville Public Utility Board through the Southwest Regional Water Association also has one, and there's a couple of other smaller ones. But we've offered to the city if you would like to be able to tour something that's about the same size. The city of Raymondville has one that's up and running. Or if you'd like to see a very large-scale one, San Antonio Water System has probably, I think it's the largest one, I know in Texas, and probably one of the largest ones in the country. We'd be happy to assist in getting those set up if that's something you'd be interested in. With respect to the debt service schedule on page 6, on column B, I know you've already adopted your budget and set your tax rate. As you know, when you look at 2022 versus 2023, you can see where your property values have gone down. That's been putting some pressure on the city financially. But what you see in column D is the debt service is actually going up from $2,650,000 to about $2,776,000. That's without the issuance of this debt. Column E is the self-supporting debt service that already exists. So the majority of the debt that is already being paid by water and sewer utility system. And so if you look at the roughly $2.7 million that's going to be paid in debt for the year, about a third of it's being paid from the utility system. If you go to column F, for this particular debt issuance, as I mentioned before, we're stair-stepping it. So for 2023, we've got $111,443. Again, these are all estimates because we don't have the interest rate locked, but this is more or less what we'd be looking at. 2024 would go up to $156,006, then $190,328, then 2026, $193,315, and then roughly about $221,000 each year thereafter till 2052. And then column G is the 0% loan, and that would be $34,000 per year for straight 30 years. And we would be looking at that being paid all by the water and sewer utility system. Column I is what we call the city's contribution towards managing the tax rate. The city's had the benefit of building up some funds in the debt service fund as well as some other funds. And so last year utilized just under $400,000, about $373,000 of that to manage the tax rate. Based on information we have, it looks like you're going to be utilizing roughly about $500,000 to manage the tax rate. And so you can see in column K, I believe the tax rate that was adopted for the interest and sinking fund was about 17.5 cents. Any questions on any of that? I know there's a lot of numbers on there, but we tried to focus on mainly 2023 for your upcoming fiscal year. Then moving on to slide 7, this particular page has a whole lot of numbers on here, and I'm only going to really try to highlight what's in the bolded yellow numbers, and that's because we've spent weeks would be an understatement, probably months, I would say. Michael and Gabe and Vanessa's not here just yet, but working on where the transition would occur as the city moves from the water that you bring in, that you pay for, from City of Corpus Christi versus the water that'll be produced from your own wells through the RO process. And so if the project were to proceed, I think this is probably going to shift by fiscal years, but you would see that in the second year, you would see the amount of cost that that's being derived from what you're paying for water on the RO plant versus water from the existing water plant will shift, so it'll transition. So in the first year, you'll see that's highlighted. About $2.1 million would come from your current water plant, and about $1.4 million would be expenses associated with the RO plant. That's going to be mainly because you're getting started, you're ramping up. And then you can see in 2024, that would go up to about $2.8 million. But you'll see the water operating expense will come down significantly from about $2.15 million to about $800,000. So if everything were to work, just right, timing-wise, as one is coming down, the other one is increasing. And so I believe the intent of the city is to operate both, but one will be at a much more reduced operational capacity, while the other one is ramping up, so that the net impact to the city is not going to be as significant as if you were building something new, and that would be much larger and not necessarily replacing existing capacity. Anything on this page? And then moving on to slide 8, preliminary timetable of events. So as we come to you today on September the 20th, we have a presentation on the plan of finance, and we're seeking your authorization to be able to give this notice of intent to publish in the newspaper 2 consecutive weeks, as well as to put in a prominent place on your city's website where it needs to be, the notice of intent to issue certificates of obligation. That will need to be in place for 45 days from the date of the first newspaper publication. And assuming that the publication will occur on the 25th of September and October the 2nd, then we would be looking to come back to you. I believe we'd be looking at right around the November the 15th, and that would be your regular city council meeting to approve the sale and the issuance of the certificates of obligation at that time. A week before that, on November the 8th, is when we would be looking to lock the interest rates from the Water Development Board. So when we receive those, we'll contact the city and say, here's what the Water Development Board has locked in. We'll update the numbers, and then when we come back to you on November the 15th, we'd be looking to have final numbers at that time in terms of the interest rate on the larger loan. And then we'd be looking to close on December the 14th, roughly 30 days later. The Texas Attorney General's office has to issue their opinion, and it takes roughly about 30 days from the date that you would actually authorize the issuance of the debt until they would issue their opinion, and then we can close. That's the general timeline and information we had to present to you. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions? Mrs. Bowen?
No, thank you.
Mr. Brook?
No.
Mr. Molina?
Very thorough, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chris?
At this time, no, I'll be reaching out. Thank you.
And if you have any
Yeah.
questions, if anything comes up, we're down here very often, and happy to stop by and go through any of the numbers and any specificity that you might like.
I do have some questions.
Yes, Mayor.
I wanted to ask you, when we were doing our current credit rating, do you know where we're at with that?
So I
Because this
believe
is
the
based
city.
on AAA, right?
Good
Okay.
question, yeah. The city, I believe, is a A+ rating with Standard & Poor's.
Okay.
One of the things that we want to do is come back probably with city manager, director of finance, and anyone else. Standard & Poor's typically does what they call surveillance, and you don't necessarily have to be issuing debt. They will just say, hey, we want this number of years of financial information. We want to do our own in-depth review. We actually have a couple of clients that are going through that right now as we speak.
Okay.
And so it's one of those things that we want to make sure that we obviously bring to the city's attention and prepare, because in some of the analysis and review that we've done in getting to this point is they're going to look at what's the fund balance versus the cash balance of your debt service fund, your general fund, solid waste, and utility. Those are the four kind of major funds that they would look at.
Okay.
They'll look at everything, but they'll be looking at that. And a lot of times people tend to equate fund balance with cash balance, and rarely are they the same. And so we had a client last year, in fact, that brought us in. We replaced another financial advisor because they said, it looks like our fund balance is fine, but our cash balance is going down pretty significantly. What's happening? And so we did some analysis and discussed that with them and said, please don't ever think that one equals the other. Very rarely are they the same. And you can be running into a cash flow problem even though your fund balance may appear to be strong. And so what the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's in particular, is going to be doing is saying, we want to look at your unassigned fund balance, which means fund balance that has no restrictions on it whatsoever. And then we want to look at your available cash balance. So all the cash that's unencumbered, completely available. And so a lot of times what they want to see is a minimum of 3 months of operations. When I say minimum, you're not at the lowest investment grade. You're at a pretty nice investment grade level. From A plus, you go into the AA category, and then natural AAA. So the expectation we always say to people is don't shoot for the minimum, because that's where you'd be if you were BBB. You really need to be thinking more in terms of 4 to 6 months of cash that's there and available, and so the benchmark that you're kind of held to is a little bit of a higher standard because of your strong credit rating, if you want to keep it, right? There are some entities that we work with, they're like, you know what, I don't want to be AAA because the standard that I have to meet is so high that I'm going to have to be holding enormous amounts of cash that I won't ever be able to use. I have to have it there basically as a reserve. So you have to kind of look at what's the right balance for the city. What are you comfortable with?
Where we're at currently.
Correct. And
current
so
standing.
we do plan to come back and, like I said, visit with your city administration, management, and be able to say, we've done some analysis. Here's kind of where you are. You haven't had surveillance, I think, probably in the last 4 or 5 years. So
Right.
I would
It's
anticipate.
been longer than that.
Yeah.
And Don and I talked about that specifically about a month and a half ago about our credit rating and what can we do to go up, and also we mentioned you mentioned about some cities our size that are getting hit on surveillance and held to a higher standard than what we are now. So
Right.
we've got to be cognizant of that as we move forward as well.
Yeah, the rating agencies have, I would say, ever since the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, have tightened up, what they look at, and what used to not be in there was pension debt. So a lot of people would say, well, the pension obligation is, it's kind of a nebulous number because who knows when people are going to retire, who knows how long they're going to live after they retire, what kind of benefits are going to be there. Well, the rating agencies as well as the accounting standards boards have now said that's debt. Just like a lease now is considered debt. So a lot of clients are coming to us and saying, you know what, I don't want to do a lease. I want to go ahead and issue debt because the debt can go on your INS tax rate versus a lease that has to go on your M&O tax rate. And based on what the legislature did 2 sessions ago, it's capped at a lower level now, so you can only move your M&O tax rate up by 3.5%. And so you have a lot less flexibility in your M&O tax rate. And so the rating agencies see this and they say, okay, not only do you have financial constraints, but you also have legislative constraints that the Texas legislature said, this is how much you can raise your M&O tax rate. And that's it. And so they're saying, I want to not do leases, I want to go ahead and borrow money for equipment and things of that nature because that's on the INS tax rate, which is not subject to that 3.5% cap. So you're kind of taking pressure off of that so that you have more money for employees and benefits and things of that nature that you may not necessarily be able to control, especially with, as you've seen, your property values that may fluctuate from year to year. So you want to have a little bit more flexibility on that side. I know we've gotten a little bit off topic, but all of those are related to things that you want to look at from a rating agency perspective.
I also wanted to ask you on page 7, on the highlighted items, I just wanted to know, as far as expenses, is there a certain number, or what was calculated? How was that calculated?
That's a good question. So we started out, I would say, a number of people had their hands in getting this. We basically kind of asked the questions of the engineer And they said that they did their own analysis, and this is how they believe that as the RO plant is ramping up, what the operating cost of that would be. And then of the water plant kind of ramping down in terms of what water is going to be produced through that plant, what those expenses would be. And then I believe those were kind of further vetted with your city staff on the utility side, and then on the financial side, and then ultimately went through the city manager. And then we basically kind of took those inputs that were provided to us. And all of this information is not information that we developed as much as we kind of put it all in one place, because the Water Development Board says, we want to see a pro forma of what this is going to look like under these circumstances. So if you're not going to use your water plant as much as you have in the past, and you're going to start using this RO plant, then as one is being used more and one is being used less, what are those costs? And so like those are all the people that got involved with pulling together those numbers. And then that was presented to the Water Development Board. And then they kind of pick it apart from the same perspective. They have their finance people, they have their engineers, and all of that, picking apart the numbers. And what they tend to do is they match up. The engineers talk to the engineers, the finance people talk to the finance people, and that type of thing, and they kind of pick it apart. So it's kind of vetted up and then vetted back down to develop those numbers. I don't know, Michael, if I missed anything.
Yeah, no, you're right. With also the Water Development Board on them, and we went through conference calls with Don, with Bill, with our finance department. And I mean, they pick everything apart and look at it. And, you know, on these numbers, and there also was just telling the city attorney that Don and his group are really conservative. So as you should be on this pro forma. Because our estimates are, you know, a little bit different. We're, you know, estimated that we're only going to buy, you know, $100,000 worth of water. Well, they're going to put in a higher number. No, let's put in 180, 220, because they just, the nature of their work is to be conservative, and it, you know, we're fine with that because it helps keep us safe on this. But we went through the exercise with the Water Development Board over several phone calls and meetings.
I would say, I think that we are probably going to be seeing more cities doing this type of action. The advances in reverse osmosis and desalination and all of that has come down significantly. And so I would say the big challenges going forward are going to be, you know, one, we're all seeing our power costs go up, right? So as natural gas is one of the main inputs to developing energy, so our electrical costs are going up. Well, natural gas is one of the main inputs, so as that goes up, the cost per kilowatt hour of energy, of electric power that you buy, goes up. RO plants are very intense needer of utility power. So you're going to probably see, you know, that's going to be one of the costs that's going to go up the most. But then you also see your personnel costs actually come down because, and I will tell you, like San Antonio Water System at their RO plant, it's massive, and I think that they can probably operate it on, you know, 4 or 5 people, and because it's all electronics now.
Right.
Yeah. But what you're not paying in personnel, you're paying in a lot of energy costs and filters and things of that nature. So those costs have kind of come down significantly. You just have to be aware of these other costs that are going up. The other one that gets a little tricky with RO plants and having 2 water sources is you have to blend the water, and you have to get the chemistry right. And when you hear about places like Flint, Michigan, where, you know, they went to a different water source, it wasn't that the water was bad, it was that the chemistry was wrong. And so you had chemistry of water flowing through water lines that had typically had different water of a different chemistry. And so it was taking some of the lining that had built up over the years on the inside of that old water line. And that ended up breaking loose because the chemistry was not the same. And so that infiltrated the water that then got people sick. So if you can get the chemistry right and you can blend the water properly, then the water lines, and I was looking at all the water lines you're going to be doing, getting that chemistry right is going to be critical.
And we have, I mean, and yeah, obviously, and Don's not involved in those, that's on
Right.
that side, he's a financial
That's-
side, but
yeah.
there is a lot of meetings that Bill Norris has with 7Cs on the engineering department, and we have regular, conference calls, because he's exactly right, the chemistries are very important, we have to match what we have in our system.
Right.
And so that's, D'Amico, is he here?
But just making those adjustments here, making sure
Yeah.
that
Right.
when we're looking at these numbers, we're
Right.
kind of incorporating those
Right.
type of issues that may arise. On page 6, I also just wanted, if you could, just explain E again to me, that I understand this properly or correctly.
So as of today, column D and column E kind of go together. So that's the annual payment that's being made for debt that's being paid by the city in column D. So that's the annual payment, principal and interest.
Okay,
Column E is self-supporting, which means it's being paid by water and sewer, utility revenues, and not by the ad valorem tax rate. So if you were to go to your column K, the 17.5 cents of INS tax rate is what is going to be paying for the difference between the 2,776,000 in column D and the amount in column E, which is a negative 953,581.
so.
So it's about about 1.6 million that's being paid by the ad valorem tax rate, not by water and sewer utility.
So when I'm looking at E, column E, that's a negative number, meaning that, what's in column K currently is not enough to generate to that payment? Or is that what I'm looking at, or is that
No,
correct?
you're absolutely right. It's
Okay.
not, what's in column K will generate the amount if you contribute in column I, the roughly 524,000, which is, I believe, pretty close to what the number is that the city's contributing from the debt service fund balance.
Okay.
So, each year going forward, you'll look at, how much you're going to pay from water and sewer utility system or solid waste, various sources that you have available to you. And then you'll set your tax rate based on, what you're not going to be paying from typically those two, which will be your solid waste fund and your utility fund.
Okay. So you're in 2024, we're looking at from 17 to 22?
If
Roughly.
your values don't change,
Okay,
and if you have a 95% collection rate,
okay,
and if you have the same amount of debt and zero contribution from your fund balances that you have available to you.
okay. Well, hopefully we'll have more
Right.
value.
And
Assessed
what
value.
what you've done in the past couple of years, you've been able to manage the tax rate. And what I kind of say to people is, if you look at your column B, 1 penny generates roughly about $77,000. So if you were to look at what 77,000 is on that $524,000, you're looking at, probably roughly around 8 or 9 cents. And so that contribution, brings down your tax rate by a pretty significant amount.
See, but the idea behind this too is that eventually we have to look at making the people who receive the water end up having increases in fees or by pennies here and there, and changing the rates that we charge for the water so that it's not spread out amongst the ad valorem taxpayers, it's spread out amongst the water users, right? So the idea that we're gonna have a 5-cent jump is worst case scenario
Remember,
if we
this is
don't.
this is a debt service schedule pro forma also, because it also changes every year. As, you know, this is now based off the 777,000 million valuation.
Right.
And
It's
that changes
also,
it.
it's also contingent on the interest rate that we.
Yeah, because it's not locked,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
So there's a
Correct.
lot of
There- yeah,
different
there's a lot of
factors.
assumptions
But this
and-
is giving us what is estimated.
Correct.
And we're roughly looking at maybe the next 5 to 6 years where it could possibly, where we would need to generate more in the INS fund. And then it goes lower,
Right. And I think.
provided we don't incur new debt.
Correct, Mayor.
Okay.
And I think, to Councilman Chris' point, the other thing that is, how you structure your rates, could be another factor, and then, how the RO plant operates. Hopefully, you'll see lower operating costs than what the engineers projected. So there's a number
There's
of things
different
that can come
factors.
into play here. Again, I wouldn't call this a worst-case scenario, but I would say a
You
conservative
give it,
case.
yeah.
Right,
Okay.
and really to give you kind of a look into the future, as far as, you don't want to have to make a decision on your budget, this month,
Right.
about something a year from now. You want to kind of be looking at it and saying, okay,
Just-
we know
just be
now,
mindful
yeah, there's
of
some
it.
things that we need to do, and how do we want to proceed in doing that?
Sure. Well,
And
I
also the
appreciate-
collection rate of 95%, we're averaging above 96%,
Right.
but, we're estimated at 95%. So all those things make a difference.
There's a little
on this.
cushion,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I'm
But
big
yeah, there's a
difference.
lot of assumptions. Sorry,
Yeah,
Councilman.
no, that's,
So,
no way.
So, yeah, there's a lot of assumptions that are embedded in here, and as time goes on, some of those assumptions will obviously become hard numbers.
Sure.
Once you start operating the plant, and once you see what your values come in at, once you have interest rates locked on the
but
project.
this is good information, just so that
Right.
we are mindful and we keep, just
Right.
when we're going through.
Yeah, your construction costs, right now,
Yeah.
those are estimates. We've got a $7 million project. If it comes in lower,
Yeah,
all of those things. So there's a lot
a little,
of numbers, and
sure,
consequently why we've been working on this for
for a
years
while.
now.
Well, I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank
Council,
you.
any other questions? No? Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I don't know,
Thank you.
Jay, if there's anything from a legal perspective.
No, Don, you didn't leave any meat on the bone for me.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, council, if there's no further questions or any discussion on this, I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion authorizing and approving publication and posting of notice of intention of issue combination tax and surplus revenue certificates of obligation in a maximum aggregate principal amount not to exceed 5.5 million and providing an effective date.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
move on to agenda item number 7.2. Hold a public hearing to discuss, consider, and act upon adopting an ordinance to rezone Lot 12A, Block 7, South Heights Addition, known as vacant lot corner of, and I say Shelley or Schley, I don't know.
Shelley.
And South Reynolds, I'll spell it out just,
Sounds like Schlegel.
it's SCHLEY, just for the record, and South Reynolds from B1 Business District to R1 Residential District, as shown by map ID F-17/SHGTS, transcribed map records, Jim Wells County, Texas. Okay, so this asks for a public hearing, so I will at this time, it is 5:55 PM. I will open the public hearing, Anyone wishing to speak in reference to agenda item 7.2 is welcome to step forward at this time.
And Mayor, if you will allow, I will give you a short little synopsis while we're waiting to see if anybody would like to speak in
This is,
favor or against.
this is one that you have brought before? Or
Yes, this
right?
one
Okay.
came to us, it's about a month ago, last meeting. So this particular item is a property owner who's requesting to rezone from a business B1 district to a R1 district. Their proposal, it's a portion of a business that they've had in their family for some time, and what they're going to do is the portion that they're rezoning is adjacent to some more residential properties, and they're going to build a single-family home there. This did go to planning and zoning and was unanimously approved, and in addition to that, we didn't receive any letters opposing or in favor of the rezone.
Can we throw in a vowel in that name, or?
What was that?
Can we throw in
To buy a
vowel in change the name of the,
Right?
fix it? Debbie?
Again, we are still in our public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in reference to this agenda item, you're welcome to step forward and speak on this. Not seeing anyone stepping forward, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. It is 5:57 PM, and we will close the hearing, public hearing now. Okay. Council, any questions or comments or discussion on this? Mr. Chris?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Molina?
I'm good, Mayor.
Mr. Burke?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Bowen?
This is a standard lot size, right?
I believe so.
Oh, there it is, 55. Sorry. No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. No other?
Nope,
Okay.
not on this one.
Okay, council, I'll entertain a motion on this agenda item.
Mayor, I make a motion to accept the rezone of Lot 12A, Block 7, South Heights Addition, known as vacant lot corner of Shelley and South Reynolds, before B1 business, from B1 district to an R1 residential district as known on map IDF 17 /SHGTS, transcribed by Map Records, Jim Wells County, Texas.
Second?
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 7.3. Discuss, consider, and act upon accepting and approving a final plat of Monsiváis Estate being a 2.0 acre tract of land being comprised of 4 5.0 acre tracts of land designated as Lot 1, Lot 2, Lot 3, and Lot number 4. Surveyed this day being out of a 64.66 acre tract of land described in a deed of conveyance to Gilbert Monsiváis and Norma Monsiváis in a deed recorded in document number 480121 of the official public records of Jim Wells County, Texas.
Mayor and Council, this property is, the proposal for this property is to break it down into 4 individual lots, very large lots, actually, 5-acre lots. This is on the northwest portion of the city, just on the right on the edge of the city limit line. Again, went to planning and zoning, no objections and no concerns.
Okay, council, any questions? Mr. Chris?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Molina?
I'm good.
Mr. Burke?
No, ma'am.
Mrs. Bowen?
No, thank you.
I was gonna ask just on this one, this is close to Acapulco, out that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do we have utilities out there, or how
Yes,
does it?
ma'am, we do.
Okay, we do already? I wasn't sure, because I know some have septics out there.
Yeah, and so the sewer and waters is available to this according to our engineering department. So this goes, when these applications come in, we send them over to engineering. They take a look to make sure that there's utilities available, and if they're not available, then they make sure that the property owner is aware that they're not available, and if there's any other options, for instance, if they needed to have a septic tank, those arrangements are made with the property owners to make sure that they follow the proper procedures to do that.
Okay.
That sewer line over there was running about 2003. Acapulco.
So this is south of Acapulco Circle?
This is on the.
It's right behind it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. No other discussion or questions on this agenda item, council? No. Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mayor, I make a motion approving the final plat for Monsiváis Estates, being a 2-acre tract of land, being comprised of 4 5-acre tracts of land designated in lot number 1 and lot number 2 and lot number 3 and lot number 4, surveyed this day, being out of a 64.66 acre tract of land described in a deed of conveyance to Gilbert Monsiváis and Norma Monsiváis, and a deed recorded in document number 480121 of the official public records of Jim Wells County, Texas.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, thank you, council. We'll move on to 7.4, discuss, consider, and act upon accepting and approving a final replat of Harkins Industrial Park, Sections 3, Lots 1A and 1B, being a plat of 1.955 acres called the South 2 acres of Lot 1, Harkins Industrial Park, Section 3, as shown on map recorded in Volume 7, page 29. Map records of Jim Wells County, Texas, said 1.955 acre tract being the tract described in a deed recorded in file number 426056, deed records of Jim Wells County, Texas.
Mayor and Council, this property owner is subdividing their property into 2 different tracts of land. Their intent is to divide so they can sell a portion of their property. I'm not exactly sure what they're planning on doing with it, but there's no zoning change request on this.
Okay, council, any questions? Mr. Chris?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Molina? Mr. Burke?
No.
Mrs. Fallon?
No, thank you.
Okay. And this is just a,
Yep, it's just they're subdividing the front half of their yard to the back half, and I believe they're going to sell the back half of that property.
okay. There's no other questions or any discussion. I'll entertain a motion at this time for this agenda item.
Mayor, I make a motion approving the final plat of Harkins Industrial Parks, Section 3, Lots 1A and 1B, being a plat of 1.955 acres, called the South 2 acres of Lot 1, Harkins Industrial Park, Section 3, as shown on a map recorded in Volume 7, page 29, map records of Jim Wells County, Texas.
Second.
Do I need to continue with that?
Do we need to continue, Mr. Lim, with the whole in?
Yes.
Said 1.955 acre tract being the tract described in a deed recorded in file number 426056, deed records of Jim Wells County, Texas.
Second.
Okay. We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That period.
Okay, so 7.5, discuss, consider, and act upon selecting at least one council member to serve on the evaluation committee to review proposals to be received in response to the issuance of a request for proposals, RFP, for administrative, plan writing, and project management services related to the CDBG MIT Local Hazard Mitigation Plans Program, LHMPP, through the General Land Office, GLO.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Barbara.
This is, we're asking you to appoint a member of the council to be on the evaluation committee for proposals to be received once we distribute the RFP, which would be to hire a consultant to help us apply for funding through GLO, to update our multi-hazard mitigation plan, which the city and the county adopted back in November 2018. So again, this is just starting to get the evaluation committee put together
Okay.
to receive those proposals in the future.
Okay, council.
Wouldn't mind throwing my name in the hat if anybody else would like to do it. They're more than welcome to it, but otherwise.
I think I did it the last time.
I think-
Yes, you
You did.
I wouldn't mind doing it either, but that's fine.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Next time. We're good.
I motion that we appoint Sandra to the board. God bless you.
Bless you.
I don't know if that was a laugh or a sneeze. I was going, what's going on here?
Okay.
So
Okay,
it's-
so
Oh, no, I'm just,
Mayor Pro Tem or council?
if you want it, you
no.
can have it. If not, I'll take it. It's up to
Well,
you.
I mean,
It's
I
at
would-
least one.
just at
It's
least one.
one.
Okay.
I mean,
So
I
you
think,
could-
I
I
think
would
Pete
like
should.
I
Mr.
think so
Pete
too.
Chris.
I think so
Alright,
too. Go
that's
ahead.
Because sometimes her firm might come out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You never know.
Oh, we won't bid on.
Yeah, around this one.
So,
We're good.
Okay,
Okay.
so
I'll do it.
council, may I have a motion to appoint,
I retract my motion. It was a joke.
Yes.
to appoint Mr. Pete Crisp as one of the members of our council to serve on the evaluation committee?
I make a motion. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
we're all confused. I make a motion to have Mr. Pete Chris be on the evaluation committee for this agenda item. For the-
Okay. Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Look forward to
you.
working with you again, Barbara.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
These are
so,
fun.
agenda item 7.6, discuss, consider, and act upon review and allocating funds for Visit Alice grant application submitted for fiscal year 2022-2023. Who would be presenting this, Mr. Esparza?
I can talk about it if we need to.
Okay.
I didn't put it on the agenda, but it's the continuation of the process, the grant process that we put in place. We had our registration, our applications, this is the review, where we'll now actually allocate the money for the rest of the year, and no other applications will come before us. You know, it's the same process that I continue to talk about, that Barbara has to use all the time, and you apply with everybody else, and then you find out when your funding is available, and that's the end of it, not throughout the year, so. we-
7.6, we did have applicants.
Yes, so we
Okay.
had 4 people, or 4 organizations come through and register, which were Black History Delegation, the Downtown Association, Habitat for Humanity, and Tejano Roots.
Tejano Roots.
And now, of the 4, we distributed the applications, we being Ms.
Odie.
Nelly and Odie. And we only had 2 return the applications for actually wanting funding. That was Tejano Roots, and that was the Habitat for Humanity. And of the 2, we had a total funding available of something like 26,000? 26,983, and we're having a total request of 22,000 for the organizations. It's a total of 3 events. Been through them. It's the 2 events that we normally do. We normally fund for Tejano Roots already, and then Habitat for Humanity's ongoing event for music and entertainment. It's a 2-day event as well. After review, my personal opinion and everything is that both of them qualify for the funding requested. If you have any questions, I'm sure we'd be more than happy to answer anything.
Mr. Esparza, we have, did we have any data that, from the previous, because we did, correct me if I'm wrong on this, did we fund last year some of these festivals?
The Tejano Roots,
Did we get some,
It was the
that was during Okay.
Yeah, but we didn't collect, I mean, I don't think we collected anything, although, did we use, Arlene, we used some placer information on that one, on any of these in May? Would they have that?
May.
The mile one,
Yeah.
that's one of.
Yeah.
We did get some data?
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying those were the two.
Oh,
They turned in their after event registration in order to receive the second half of the funding because
Right.
we only gave them the first half.
Right.
And then they turned their data in afterwards, and we had information that showed that they exceeded expectations for that event. And we all know that the January event fills up our hotels for the Tejano Roots induction. They have the multi-day event there too. Habitat for Humanity's application is a minimal application where they think they're going to get maybe 20 rooms. They're applying for $2,000, but they actually expect to actually qualify for only about 1,500. They're not asking for anything in advance like we do for Tejano Roots for the events. So they're not asking for anything in advance. Theirs would only be here, we're proving it, here are receipts, and if, you know, however much we qualify for, we'll take. So theirs is on the back end versus Tejano Roots would be 50 up front for each event and then the rest of it after the fact.
And what was the amount again, Gabriel? 29?
It's available, 26.93.
And what are they asking for? 22?
22
22.
straight. It's $10,000 per event for Tejano Roots and the $2,000 for Habitat. And like I said, Habitat actually does not even really anticipate getting there. It's just they request that as an allocation.
Well, we will do tracking on these. Now we have the ability to get some data to be able to confirm stays and visits and things like that. And it's the same kind of information that we use for the parks on the presentation on how many visits were there. So we'll be able to double check that as well
And then
moving forward.
I know that one of Habitat's process for tracking this as well is the idea that they're going to try to partner with maybe a specific hotel, if nothing else, to get rates, to get a group rate, or multiple hotels to get a group rate, and then come and collect the data on who actually got that group rate is one surefire way to know who actually stayed for that specific event. So that's what we're, pushing. Also, what I've also been pushing with for Tejano Roots is, try to get a group rate, work with people, make sure you get people to stay there, make sure people identify that they stayed there underneath the group rate, and that's easy collection.
At the end of the day, it puts it on them.
That's,
They kind of line it up and bring it through.
yeah. Bring the proof or you don't qualify for the portion of money that's still existing, that's still being withheld, so.
And all these events, these three events they're well attended and really wonderful for our community.
And they've gone through the vetting of being a nonprofit organization, the both of them, obviously. I think one of the little hangups that, after talking with downtown, they're still in the process of getting their nonprofit, after talking to their secretary, they're still in the process of getting their nonprofit, so they didn't want to allocate money and maybe take away from somebody else what we might be able to utilize somewhere else. But they'll definitely be on the list for next year once they get the paperwork done.
Right.
well, it's encouraging to always have anyone out there wanting to bring festivals to the city of Alice. Anything that could promote anyone visiting our city. If there's no further discussion or questions in reference to this agenda, I'll entertain a motion at this time, council.
Mayor, I make a motion allocating hot funds as presented through the Visit Alice grant application for 2022-2023 in the sums of $10,000 per event for Tejano Roots with the 50% up front per event and retaining the additional value for the after-event paperwork and for the Habitat for Humanity fundraiser allocating $2,000, all to be received after the event.
Okay. We have a first and a second.
Ron.
Mr. Burke.
You have to watch the video for that one.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 7.7, discuss, consider, and act upon adopting a resolution of the City of Alice adopting written policies for the investment of public funds and designating investment officers in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 2256.
Good
Hello.
evening, Mayor, Council. Like you mentioned, this is your investment policy that we put in place. It's in front of you for your approval. The purpose of this document is to set forth specific investment policy and strategy guidelines for the city. As you acknowledge, it's a requirement of the Texas Code. Just a few items on page 1, objectives and strategy. Number 1 is safety. Obviously, that's a foremost objective of the city. We want to have investments in high credit quality securities. On page 2, you'll see liquidity. We want to make sure our investments are less than 91 days to keep cash flow going. Diversification, we want to make sure that we have diversification and maturity in the market sector. We have competitive bidding, and we have a number of brokers and dealers involved. Finally, we have yield. We want to make sure we attain a market rate for our return. If you go further down on page 2, investment officers, at this time, you have myself, the Director of Finance, and in my absence, you have the Deputy Finance Director, Vanessa. We have a 2-year certification. I went at the end of last year. Vanessa will go at the end of this year, so we're kind of staggered. That way you always have somebody certified.
Good, yes.
On page 3, you'll have the City Council responsibilities. You'll, again, like I mentioned, you'll designate the investment officers. You'll approve and provide the officer training, and you'll review and adopt the investment policy on an annual basis. On page 4, you'll see the authorized investments. At this time, we're investing through Logic. It's a AAA investment pool, lower rates, but as Don mentioned, rates are increasing, so hopefully we'll get to see some improvement there. And on page 6, finally, you'll see collateralization.
Excuse me,
Based-
Gabriel.
I apologize.
I don't know what you're
I've been
talking
keep
about.
looking about that, but we haven't
It's-
seen, we don't have any of that.
Oh,
They only have the
no.
resolution, they don't have the policy.
Yeah, okay.
I apologize.
Yeah, and I was like, no, no, no.
There's
I
an
don't see it.
attachment to the
I'll email
site.
it.
but
Thank you.
I apologize.
Can't open it.
You can go back. I apologize.
Resolution policy.
So you'll just see that we have added security because we rate at 102 above market value. So you'll say, foremost, we want to be transparent and secure in all of our investments. So that's, again, this will come to you every year, and it's something that's been on the books and I didn't make many changes to it, if anything at all. Yeah.
You have it there in front of you?
Yes.
Let's run up some copies for them right now.
I apologize, I have my notes on it. I didn't realize y'all didn't have copies.
It's okay.
But that's what that is.
It is a document that has been presented
Correct,
before.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, it's something we have to do
Yes,
annually.
Yes, you're
Yes.
right.
And you have to approve and allow for Vanessa and myself to be investment officers.
One of the things on there also is not having, and the exception, and we'll see it on there, your investments in one place, unless if it's a qualified fund like what we have, you can have them all in one place, but if it's not a qualified fund, then you can't have more than a, we have 100% on that,
Right.
don't we? Yeah. Okay. And we have it in,
I apologize, we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
yeah, we have it in
I
Logic.
passed out, I apologize.
No problem.
It's okay.
I was like, how did Pete get it?
I kept going back and forth.
I kept looking too, but,
Council, are
okay.
y'all wanting to act on this or wait and bring it back until y'all review? You know, do we have a deadline for this? Yes, okay.
Well, we can,
It's the same document.
Yeah, it's
It's the same document.
Yeah,
that
that we've had before.
annually for you.
I'm more than willing to move forward on really conceptually considering that this is the exact same thing we do every year.
Right.
So, yeah, instead of pushing back and
Right.
taking a chance or even moving on to the next agenda item, so.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
the mayor's willing.
Okay. Okay. Then at this time, on this agenda item, 7.7, I will entertain a motion.
May I make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City of Alice adopting written policies for the investment of public funds and designating investment officers in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 2256.
The only thing you have to do
Do
is
I
state
need
the
to-
investment.
Lujan?
The officers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Vanessa Torres? And I can never say your name, Gabriel
Alzadua.
Alzaduva? Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Gabriel A.
Gabriel A. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Gabriel.
Do you have a second?
Second.
okay. Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed, I'm sorry, all opposed, same sign. Okay, then motion passes. Thank you. Okay, 7.8, conduct a public hearing to discuss, consider, and receive comments on the 2019 Texas CDBG Contract 7219489 wastewater infrastructure improvements on San Felipe, Escobar, and Trevino Streets. Welcome back.
Good evening again. Mayor and council, the purpose of this public hearing, it's the final public hearing on the CDBG wastewater grant that the city received and worked in conjunction with the county
Go
to
ahead.
provide first-time sewer connection service to 10 households and to 34 beneficiaries on the 3 streets, Trevino, Escobar, and San Felipe.
Okay. I will go
So,
ahead and
yes, that
open
was just
the,
the background.
sure, thank you. I will open the public hearing in reference to this agenda item. It is 6:22 PM. And anyone wishing to speak on behalf of this agenda item, you're welcome to step forward and speak on this agenda item. And this, again, is just on infrastructure, you said, for
It's
Wastewater.
infrastructure on those 3 streets.
San Felipe, Escobar, and
and
Trevino.
Trevino.
Okay.
First-time sewer connections.
Okay. And it was for 10, how many
It's
residential?
For 10 households and 34 beneficiaries.
Okay. Again, anyone wishing to step forward and speak on behalf of this agenda item, you're welcome to step forward.
While we wait, Barbara, can I ask you a question quick? Did we have a match in this one?
Yes, and the city and the county provided a match in kind.
Okay.
Joe Sines Cruz worked to do the sewer connections, and Commissioner Margie Gonzalez's crews did other work.
Is there a value on that?
I think ours was 45 and the county's was 25.
So right around 60. Thank you.
Usually for the CDBG, when we work with the consultants on that, they recommend 20% of what you're applying for to get the maximum points for the match.
Yeah, I think you had said 70 and I said 60 because I was thinking 20%, but it was 70.
Well, it was either.
Somewhere right around there?
Okay. Seeing no one wishing to step forward and speak in reference to this agenda item, I will close the public hearing at this time. It is 6:24 PM. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate. Okay. So moving on to 7.9, here's status report on August 2022, month-end financial statements, summary of funds, and delivery of August 2022 check registry.
Okay, we have this one, right? All righty, here we go, the financials, the 11th month ending August 31st, 2022. General fund revenues are $11,853,128. Our property tax budget was $2,682,167, and year-to-date, we have received $2,817,296. Exhibit B will have the M&O and INS of $4,002,124. Last year, we had just over 3.9 million, and we had so we're roughly 91,000 above that mark. Going back to Exhibit A, sales tax was budgeted at 5.5 million, and we are showing 4,773,111 through June. Exhibit C. This is sales tax budget versus actual, and this includes the month of July. July's collection was 598,609, 158,000 above target. 2022 budget is 4.4 million, and we have an actual of 5,371,721. So for the year, we're 971,000 above that mark. Exhibit D, we have actual 2022 versus actual 2021, and we have an increase of just under 770,000 over previous year to date.
What was that number again?
769,941.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Exhibit E is the general fund expenditures. Year to date, we have 12,828,070. Just to touch on a couple of the larger departments, general service is sitting at 93% of their budget. Fire department is at 112%. Again, that's the TIF miss, and we are working on it. We're seeing some reimbursements come in. We're hoping to get a big chunk of it by the end of this month and continue on that. Police department as well is sitting at 95% of budget. Municipal court is at 93%, and parks and playgrounds is at 94%. Exhibit F, revenues versus expenditures for all funds. The general fund, we show the negative 974, 943. Again, that's the TIF miss. So roughly, right now on the books, we're hoping to get about 600,000 of that back in reimbursements. Solid waste is 698,712 in the negative, and that's the rentals and equipment. And Mr. Guetta did report that as of next week, we'll be turning in the last of the rentals, so we should see a difference in that going forward. Utility fund is sitting at a negative 209,064. Something on that is we were running a little, when we ran financials on our new contract for disposal, we didn't bill for a month, so once we got that in, it should switch that. The airport fund is at a negative 81,041 with the transfer. The golf course fund is at 1,688 with the transfer, and the hotel occupancy is at 122,366. The final slide is revenue over expenditures comparing 2021 and 2022. The general fund was at a negative 974,943 last year. I apologize, this year, and last year we were at a negative 249,052. Solid waste was at a 59,984, and now we're showing a negative 698,712. And lastly, utility fund was 683,311, and we're at a negative 209,064. And those are the financials for August.
Council, any questions? Mr. Chris?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Molina?
No.
Mr. Burke?
No.
Mrs. Bowen?
Not at this time.
Can you tell me a little bit again on the utility fund? You said on 22, we're showing 209 negative. What is contributing to that?
On the utility fund,
Yes.
it's because we were billing out, we have that new contract that we have the waste going, the disposal, and
That,
we were.
the new contract?
Yes, ma'am, for the
Okay.
vendor that wanted it.
Yeah, okay.
And so we were about a month behind on billing. So when we ran the financials, it didn't show up at that time. And so right after that, we billed it, so it's actually zeroed out right now. So really, if I were to report this, it would be zeroed out.
Okay. So our expenses
Right, we
versus what
covered,
we,
yes.
it's zeroed out?
Right.
Okay. Okay. And I did look at the check registry,
You
but.
didn't look at it?
I did.
Oh, it's all right.
But I
We have it go ready.
No, but I saw where those, a lot of it
You
was
sure?
the engineering and
Mhm.
some of those that we paid out, so they were pretty,
You got it? Okay.
yeah. So, I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, moving on to agenda item number 8, adjournment. At this time, council, I will entertain a motion for agenda item number 8.
Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. No one is, no. Motion passes, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much. It is 6:31 PM.